All right, greetings, class, and welcome to week number 11. That is right, week number 11 of your 9443 class, which is your academic libraries class. As always, I'm your professor, Dr. Jace K. Alston. And what we are going to do today is a quick state of the course update, and then we will follow that up with just a few words on librarian tenure. So that is something that I've been talking about quite a bit here and there within the class, but I haven't really actually sat down with a check-in video and said, hey, this is what librarian tenure actually may or may not mean for you. It's going to mean different things in different places. And here's why you may or may not want a job that grants tenure to librarians in academic libraries. So let's first start out, though, with that state of the course update. That's what we really need to get into. The state of the course is, well, you all are largely doing fine, and you have, as I've said previously, gotten most of the work already done. The main thing that you need to be aware of, again, is you do have a sync session, and that sync session will be about community college librarianship. We will have our final sync session on November the 14th, and we will have 3 speakers on a panel come in, and I'm very excited about that. The other thing is to just keep in mind that, yes, you will, on December the 11th, have to turn in that final paper. And I will have your other essays graded before then so that you will know anything that you may need to correct prior to turning in that final paper. Really, that is it for the state of the course update because, like I've told you all before, you've already done most of the heavy lifting. What you have left to do now is actually mostly just discussion board posts and reading. And that's just the way an academic library class works. It's not going to be very heavy on the course load unless I invent busy work for you. And I'm not going to invent busy work for you because I have to grade all the busy work that I would create for you. So having said that, let's go ahead and quickly shift gears. We are already shifting gears now to... Hold on. All right, so I am going to link to this article, and this is an old article or an old column. It's from 2014. It's old. It's nearly 10 years old, but this is just quite frankly the shortest thing that I could find that I wanted to just kind of base what I was going to be discussing off of. So yes, this is going to have to support. Sorry, hit that pause button by mistake. This is going to have to suffice for our purposes today. But the question is, should academic librarians have tenure? And this article is saying, should academic librarians have tenure may be the wrong question. So first of all, what is tenure? For those of you who don't know, I'm going to keep this in a nutshell because this can get really complicated and we're not trying to have a long check-in video here. So just in a nutshell, tenure is basically a protection that a lot of colleges and universities offer to definitely to teaching faculty, and then also a lot of times to librarians and to a few other faculty who are not considered quote-unquote teaching faculty, and that just varies by whatever college or university you're at, right? But yes, so the protections of tenure are that basically it's a system that causes you to pay your dues, and then once you pay your dues, if you have been successful in paying your dues and shown that you are a grounded and good researcher and teacher, then you can be granted protections for tenure, and then tenure will allow you to do more, a lot of times more controversial work without being given the axe because you've already paid your dues. So for instance, if you were, and this would never be me, and this actually is going to be a really terrible example, but it's what's coming to my head right now, and I got a lot to do, so I'm going to have to just go with what's in my head. But like, for instance, you can have a psychology teacher or a psychology professor on the tenure track, and they spend maybe 6 years on that tenure track, and they do a lot of psychology research. And that research gets published and it influences their field and they get cited a lot and so forth and so on. And then they also get good teaching reviews and they have good service reviews and that sort of thing. When all of that comes together, that psychology professor may get tenured if they had enough publications and creative output. That's usually 40% of the job for a professor. Another 40% of the job for a professor would be the teaching aspects and making sure that they have good teaching reviews and that sort of thing. And then the final 20%, because scholarship is 40%, and teaching is 40%. And then a lot of times that last 20% is service. Are you on committees? Are you doing work within your profession? Are you doing work in your community, and so forth and so on? So that's pretty much how the tenure breakdown works. And as an example, I would say of doing something controversial, let's say, and again, I apologize for this example, but it's the example that's coming to my head right now. Let's say that you have that psychology professor, and that psychology professor is also somebody who wants to say that pedophilia is a mental illness, right? Let's say that the psychology professor believes that. So that's probably not something that the psychology professor wants to actually pursue before tenure. Okay, you probably want to do some more mainstream stuff prior to receiving tenure, pay your dues, publish in areas that are not going to be controversial and are not going to cause the university to not want to have anything to do with you. And then once you are granted tenure, if you're that psychologist that believes that, hey, pedophilia is a mental illness and we shouldn't criminalize it, we should treat it like other mental illnesses, you know, that can get you in some pretty deep shit if you are not somebody who is if you're not protected by tenure, you know, they're going to come for you. They're going to call you a hack. They're going to try to get you out of that psychology field because they're your other colleagues at other institutions and even at your own institution are not going to want to have anything to do with you if you're going to go around calling pedophilia a mental condition instead of a criminal, what have you, right? But once you are afforded the protections of tenure, then you can turn around and say, hey, you know, I paid my dues, I did this, I did the research, and now I want to take a stand that's controversial and not be given the axe. And that is what tenure is supposed to create and safeguard for us all. If we're on tenure track, okay, which I am not on tenure track, by the way, and I've only been on tenure track once. I was on tenure track when I was at Coastal Carolina University as a business librarian, and I left there before even getting into my third year review. Okay, so I'm what's considered non-tenure track teaching faculty here at Mizzou, and frankly, I prefer it that way. But that may change one day, but that's where I am now. Okay. So now that I've told you in a nutshell what tenure is for professors, let me tell you a few other things that can be different when you're a librarian. Pause. Okay, so one of the oddities about all of this is that really librarian tenure just kind of really is different from place to place. There's no consistency. Well, I shouldn't say there's no consistency to it, but there's not a lot. There's not a lot of consistency to it. Now, things are different for other professors, professors, I should say, from institution to institution as well, when it comes to granting tenure. So, for instance, if you are at a teaching institution, a lot of times they will, like if you've got a 6 or 7 year tenure plan at a comprehensive teaching institution versus a research institution, a lot of times they will only need to have maybe even 3 or 4 peer-reviewed articles within that time. Maybe a peer-reviewed article every other year and then a bunch of other stuff. But when we weigh these things, a lot of times people will tell you a peer-reviewed article is worth 10 times a non-peer-reviewed article as far as getting tenures and promotion, right? So you can have like 10 non-peer-reviewed articles, and then once, like on your CV, and then if you get that one peer-reviewed article in that same amount of time that you had those 10 peer-reviewed articles, those 10 non-peer-reviewed articles, I'm sorry, I'm stumbling all over my words, they will actually give more power to that one and more weight to that one peer-reviewed article than they did to those other 10 things that you wrote combined even. So I do want you all to keep that in mind, but also, that comes into play more at research institutions, right? So at teaching institutions, maybe you might only do maybe 3 peer-reviewed articles in your tenure process, your 6 to 7 years when you are working trying to get tenure. Alternatively, if you are at a research institution, they might want you to have at least what averages out to at least 1 peer-reviewed article a year. So 6 or 7 as opposed to 3. And trust me, that does make a big difference when you are trying to get your stuff peer reviewed and trying to go through that process and making the adjustments the peer reviewers tell you to make and all of that, right? So yes, so it varies with professors as well, right? But things get really interesting when you're dealing with librarianship, because then it really just becomes a free for all. You might be at a place at some R1 where they might expect even the librarians to have probably not 6 to 7 peer-reviewed journal articles, but certainly they will have you have some at some of these higher tier academic libraries. They might want you to have 3 or 4 peer-reviewed journals during your 6 to 7 years of tenure, going through the tenure process trying to get tenure, okay? And they may actually want objective research at the R1s and so forth, at the heavy duty research institutions. The contrast there would be like if you're at a teaching institution as a librarian, then a lot of times what they're having you go through is they're not trying to have you produce actual empirical research. They may actually even, like when I was on tenure track for the University of South Carolina, I was producing thought pieces, and then as long as those thought pieces even were ending up as book chapters or articles in non-peer-reviewed journals, which was happening, that was still going a long way in my in my tenure process, okay? So librarianship can be that way. And then also sometimes librarian tenure processes don't even involve having to publish anything externally. So I've seen where some librarians were granted tenure not for what they published and not for what they did externally, but actually for writing standards of operation and different procedural things within their own library. And that stuff never even made it outside of their library, and they were still getting tenure for that. So I say that to say, yeah, it's a free for all. No matter where you go, if you are going to be on a tenure track as an academic librarian, one thing that you probably need to do up front is ask them, okay, so what are those expectations? What do they look like? And if they, if you're at that R1 and they look like, oh, you got to publish 3 peer-reviewed journal articles, just know that that's going to be pretty stressful, okay? But if you're somewhere, saying it's stressful is not to discourage you. You can totally do it, but I'm just saying it's not going to be a walk in the park to do it. But again, you can certainly do it, and many librarians have. And then if you are somewhere where they're not necessarily making you publish empirical research, but you do have to publish things externally to get tenure, then know those expectations as well and try to find some avenues to where you can write and have some things published. And then if you're at a place where you can get your tenure just through doing well with one-shots within your library and then also producing documents that your library uses, by all means, go for it. That could be the least stressful avenue of all, okay? And a lot of times what we need to do is go to those least stressful avenues and try to save ourselves some stress. All right, but I do want to kind of go through this article really quickly, and I will link the article in the announcement. All right, so yes, this little column here just asking the question, should academic librarians have tenure? Maybe the wrong questions. No, not so much asking the question, but kind of putting something rhetorical out there. And we've seen things in this class from Meredith Farkas before. She is a force to be reckoned with within our field, and she is somebody who, I don't know if she's still at the community college, but I remember that Ms. Farkas, she had left a university to go to a community college, and people were acting like she was taking a step back by doing that, and she absolutely was not. It just fit her better, and frankly, community colleges fit me better too, so I understand where she was coming from. I do think that, let me see if that post is still available. It may not be. Okay, great. So the post is still available. I will actually post both of these then into the message area of the announcement. But one thing that I want to say is that, yes, I can see why she would say that tenure for librarians is counterproductive, because a lot of times it does take us we as librarians basically have a day-to-day function, right? So every day we're doing stuff, we're teaching one-shots, we may be cataloging or archiving or building our collections or things like that. We may be working the reference desk, helping students with research, helping faculty with research, and so forth and so on, making decisions about what databases to buy, what databases to cancel, technology issues that we have to address within the library. It is a lot going on, right? And so when you have all of these day-to-day responsibilities, yes, it could be perhaps counterproductive to say, okay, well, you librarians also need to take time out of your workday or make time while you're at home and off the clock to produce research, to produce articles, to get empirical research, crunch numbers, do qualitative analysis, and whatever the case may be. I can see the argument as to why that would be counterproductive when you actually have things that you have to do in your day-to-day responsibilities, okay? So, and we are going to skip this. It's talking a little bit about adjuncts here. So the author of this piece, she is telling us that for a bit of context, she was tenured in 1993. So she is celebrating 30 years of being tenured this year. So that's pretty cool. And since 2009, she's done things such as support the tenure efforts of 2/3 of her librarian colleagues at the very small college that she works at. And that has led her to this conclusion that the work within the tenure process has allowed, for one thing, it has allowed non-librarian colleagues, I'm assuming that means other teaching faculty, to more deeply understand what librarians do day to day. So one thing that I want to do is say that I'm not exactly sure how true or accurate that is. I don't think that professors a lot of times really want to know or really care about what librarians are doing throughout their day. Maybe they do, but I think that outside of library science professors, the professors are all pretty much just thinking that librarians are there to kind of help with the mission of the institution. But they're not I don't think faculty are really that interested in what we do from minute to minute, because they're concerned about what they're doing from minute to minute, and they're concerned about the research that they've got to produce and the teaching that they've got to do and the service they've got to do and what's going on in their own departments and in their own fields, the trends and so forth like that. And so I would actually relate it to me saying that I feel the exact same way with these other people, right? So I do have some interest in, I guess, what are history professors doing from day to day, or what trends we're seeing within history departments throughout the country and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, I don't care that much because I have my own thing to worry about. And so I don't know that producing stuff within the tenure process that kind of informs non-librarians on what librarians are doing from minute to minute is really that appreciated or really that much in high demand, honestly. So, and this does make an important point, and I do in this paragraph, and I do want to just kind of, because this may mean I need to correct something that I just said a few minutes ago. But also, it does need to be said that many academic librarians do have faculty status without being on tenure track or without being tenured. So there are actually also, there are academic libraries that consider their librarians as faculty and academic libraries that consider their librarians as staff. And really, the big distinction there, really, honestly, if we're telling the truth, is going to be benefits, pay, and vacation. Those are really going to be the big things. So if you are at a place where the academic librarians are considered staff, a lot of times they will have the same vacation package that a staff person would. They're going to be 12-month employees who probably get 2 to 3 weeks worth of vacation. But then they probably also get like a lot of holidays and winter break and that sort of thing off as well. But not spring break a lot of times, not fall and spring break, because a lot of times the library is still open during those times. But yeah, your librarians who are considered staff, a lot of times they also are paid a little less, and they are typically typically they're treated like staff, so they can join the staff association and do staff initiatives and that sort of thing at the college. And that spares them from having to serve on like faculty committees and that sort of thing. If you are a faculty member at a university, as a academic librarian, then yes, you will probably have more pay. You will probably also, in that situation, have a lot of times what I see are that rarely do I see faculty librarians be 9-month employees, because professors a lot of times are 9-month employees at these universities. Even faculty librarians a lot of times are still not 9-month employees. They're still 12-month employees, but a lot of times that comes with a full month of vacation time or 4 weeks of vacation time as opposed to 2. Really, everybody should be getting 4 weeks of vacation time, but that's a soapbox for another day. I'm just going to say yes. So you will probably get better benefits, better vacation time, and more pay if you are recognized as faculty on your university campus. But then also you are subject to some of the issues that faculty may be considered to go through. For instance, a lot of times faculty are overtime exempt, meaning that if you work more than 40 hours a week, oh well. Whereas staff a lot of times is not faculty. Not faculty exempt. A lot of times staff is not overtime exempt, meaning that they can earn overtime or comp time if they are working more than 40 hours in a particular week. Okay. So that's something you may want to keep in mind. And then also being faculty, even if you're not tenure track faculty, being faculty at your university means you'll probably have to serve on some committees and do some of that extra service work that people who are staff are not required to do. So that's something you may want to keep in mind and something that you probably want to factor into your decisions as you apply for jobs and those sorts of things. All right. Now, so yeah, for this next paragraph here, I will say that there's a lot going on in this paragraph, and I'm not going to go through it hand in hand, but, word for word. But one thing that I want to do is kind of show or highlight what we've got here. So I love that line right there. Research is a requirement for not getting fired, but if you want to move up, publications will have a little impact. That is one of the follies that I do feel about actually granting tenure or having librarians be on tenure track, is that you really, really, really have to, I don't know. It's like you have to really understand a time management process that really isn't clear. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So yeah, they'll say that research is a requirement for not getting fired, but if you want to move up, the publications will have little impact. So you have to have some research, and you have to try to build time into your day and into your duties for that research. But at the same time, you can spend a lot of time doing research. Trust me, I know, because I did a dissertation. And that's the thing. They will tell you, you got to have research because you don't want to get fired. You have to have sufficient research, sufficient research, sufficient research. And it's going to take time away from something. It'll either take time away from your other duties when you're on the clock, or you do it off the clock and it takes time away from your family, or it takes time away from sleep, or it takes time away from your me time. And yet, after they're telling you that you have to do all that research in order to not get fired, they will turn right around and limit the amount that that research counts for on your tenure file and tell you that, yeah, really it's your librarian duties that count the most. But still, you got to have that research. And we're not going to tell you exactly how much. Okay. And so that's something that can be very, very frustrating to faculty practitioners within our field. And then I would also say that this next piece kind of amplifies even what was said in the paragraph before it. LIS research is crap, and the research that I want to do doesn't count. That is a big, big deal. A lot of times, LIS research is just, it's bad. And a lot of the reason why it's so bad is because you're not really trained in research methods at the MLIS level. You do take research methods classes, but it's not like a PhD where you are actually being trained on how to be a researcher. You do very basic research in your MLIS research methods courses if you take them. But it's not like when you are going up for a PhD. And so a lot of our research is really just is research on our own practitioners. Like, what do our practitioners like? What don't they like? What issues do they come up against, and how do they solve them, and that sort of thing. We do have a lot of research that is research that collects information from actual librarians, actual library practitioners, and that's good, and it has its place. But the thing is, a lot of times we don't have like patron-based research because we're so focused on what we can do conveniently, especially when we are academic librarians with full-time academic librarian responsibilities who are still being told that we also have to produce research. What are you going to do in that situation? Are you going to try to put a survey together that allows you to survey other librarians, and you know you're going to have a high response rate and a limited population? Or are you going to try to do the research on library users, students and faculty and that sort of thing, and then you have to convince students and faculty to participate, and you're going to have lower response rates and that sort of thing? We obviously know our answer, okay? And so that's another reason why, you know, if we want meaningful research within our field, we can't rely on academic librarian practitioners to do it all. We've got to have some other, or we've got to have some other outs, right? So if you're going to have a librarian, an academic librarian researcher actually produce all this research for the LIS field, you have to give them leeway in some other ways. You have to reduce the amount of other things that they have to do when they're on the clock. You have to give them staff that can support whatever they're doing. If they are devoting themselves to research, then they've got to have some staffers that are doing the reference desk every now and then, or cataloging here and there and that sort of thing, okay? And so, again, it becomes a big time issue, and that is what it is all the time. It is a time issue. But I will say this, and then I'm going to close it up because I'm approaching on 30 minutes, and I do hope that you paused this. I mean, not paused it. I do hope that you sped this up. But I will say that, you know, why tenure matters to me. This is actually a pretty good paragraph. So it asks my colleagues and myself to take teaching seriously and to do it as well as we can in whatever form supports student learning. So I have heard librarians say sometimes that, hey, as long as the students know something after the session that they didn't know before the session, I feel I've done my job. And that is sometimes all you can expect, especially, I don't mean to stereotype first year students, but that's all you can expect sometimes for first year students. They're not that serious. They're 18 years old. They just left home. What are you going to do? A lot of times you can't really expect them to take a whole lot of stuff seriously. So yeah, you know, you do what you can, but when you are actually tenure track and you have an opportunity to teach, I guess, people that may take it more seriously, grad students, upperclassmen within, like, juniors and seniors within undergrad or something, then yes, the tenure process could be something that forces you to refine your teaching techniques and do your one shots a little better and that sort of thing. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Tenure does give a lot of librarians support. And by support, what I mean is, yes, if once they get tenured, they can a lot of times have an increased travel budget. They can have a lot more freedom. So they can have freedom, for instance, to leave the library for a day to go speak somewhere or something like that. You'll get those opportunities on the tenure track as well, because that's a lot of times how people actually earn tenure. But I'm just saying, like, that funding and those speaking opportunities, a lot of times they go up once you've actually been through the tenure process successfully, okay? And as far as this last sentence, I do just want to read it real quick. With or without tenure in the picture, these seem to me to be working conditions every academic librarian should have. Based on my recent conversations, too few librarians with or without tenure have them. So have, you know, the support, the respect from colleagues and that sort of thing. And in some cases, they don't even want them, and that troubles me. We do need to want to have the respect of the professors that we work alongside. I'm not going to say work for, I'm going to say work alongside. We do need to have their respect, because when we have their respect, that is when we can actually advocate for raises for ourselves, for better pay for ourselves, for more faculty and more staff within the library. For you have to, a lot of times now, and I think I mentioned this before, a lot of universities are moving non-library personnel into library office spaces because they don't have anywhere else to house those people. They don't take seriously that we need our office space. These are issues that we don't want to have to be dealing with. And so there is this this theory, or this idea, that if we do have tenure at academic libraries, then they'll be more likely to respect us. I don't know how accurate that is, but that is the wishful thinking of many. So I'm going to leave it right there. And with that said, I am Dr. Jace. And if there is one thing that the tenure process doesn't involve, it's definitely grace. Okay. All right. I will see you all next week with a, well, is next week our sync session? Okay. No, no, next week is a sync session for reference. I'm sorry about that. Yes, I will see you all next week. Thank you and bye-bye.